Well, I saw Superman and, boy, do we have a lot to talk about in this video with my opinion on this film. But if you want the short of it, it's probably in the title. So, yeah, James Gunn has done it. He's done it. He has single-handedly saved DC films, birthed a new universe, and completely managed to undo a decade plus of damage that the last version of Superman did. So let's get to it. So as I said in the opening, there will be no spoilers in this. If you've seen it in the trailer, I will tackle that and I will talk about it. But outside of that, there will be no spoilers for anything Superman in this film. Some people might consider something a mild or a small spoiler, but I promise you it is not. And I'm not going to get into any of the big revelations, twists, or turns, or anything like that. So with that in mind, I of course saw the film and, well, I got a bunch of feelings. You can probably tell by the length of the video, which I'm assuming is going to run rather longer than I think I wanted to, or I think most people wanted to. But I really need to get a lot of stuff in regards to this film off my chest, talk about it, talk about the long development, and of course, what happened with it. So the first thing I want to touch upon is Man of Steel. This, of course, is another reboot of Superman due out less than 15 years after the last one, and that one came just less than 10 years after the last one, which was Superman Returns, and of course a ongoing TV series at the time, which completely reinvented Superman, aka Smallville. So this take on Superman has a lot of baggage. There's a lot of history, there's a fragmented fan base, there is all sorts of different opinions on who Superman should be, what he should be doing, and even in the meantime of that, we got a Supergirl reboot on TV and a Superman reboot, Superman and Lois, which to date is my favorite iteration of Superman of all time. So to say that anticipation for this film was high, but also, could it live up to the hype and anticipation is no small task or feat for any director to try to live up to. So what I want to get into first and foremost is some of the messaging and the controversy of Superman leading up to its release and how James Gunn tackles controversial issues. So as most of you are very well aware of this film recently making it onto Fox News, which I covered, and them being super upset that Superman is an immigrant tale, well, wouldn't you know it, that if Fox watches this film, they might actually have an aneurysm and completely check out and go and pivot their entire news organization on just bashing Superman and James Gunn for the rest of eternity. And to further explain what I'm talking about, I need to use the Star Wars series Andor, for example. Andor is very much rooted in events happening around the world in the last couple of years and even decades. So what I'm talking about is, of course, the whole Gorman situation. In Andor, you have the Gormans who have been slowly taken over, and the Empire gets to their land and slowly starts expanding. They then force the Gormans to stand up for themselves by trying to take literally one of their most precious sites, and they do a false flag. This is obviously drawing a lot of comparisons to events happening in specific locations in the Middle East, how they're backed, and how the news media and propaganda will paint resistance fighters and or people of their homeland as the aggressors, while the invaders are painted as the heroes. This is obviously something that some people, if they're illiterate to media understanding, will not get. Superman tackles these issues in the world today in much the same way. So yes, talking to some people after the film, I wanted to see if they could connect the dots, if they have media literacy, and they did. Pretty much everybody I talked to said, this film tackles toxic fandoms, MAGA, Trump, and ICE, and says all are bad, and if you like them, you're bad. It's very simple, it's in your face, and it's Superman. Now again, this might upset some people. I know people have been saying that don't make comic book films political, don't make Superman political. I'm not seeing the film. But at its core, if you're watching Superman, and you're not understanding that he is an immigrant, and this is very much a pro-immigrant movie, I don't think you understand Superman and or like Superman, and maybe you just want action and nonstop explosions. If that's the case, you still got Man of Steel, and that tackles the exact imagery you want, which is Superman being an allegory for Jesus, which doesn't make sense because he was never intended to, as he was created by two Jewish people. But that's neither here nor there, as the message of Superman in this film has landed full force. This is Superman. The next thing I want to tackle is the plot and the overstuffed film, now that we got all the political stuff out of the way. So the plot is rather loaded and stuffed, but I don't think it's to the point where you're not going to understand it. I think everything is balanced rather well, and while there is some stuff that does fall to wayside, especially in the third act to deliver the over-the-top action, I think what we got in the film works. At its core, it's a Superman film dealing with who is Superman in a world that maybe doesn't even need Superman because there's tons of other heroes. Or maybe it just needs the optimism and hope of Superman, while others are a little bit more corporatized and, of course, used for specific tech billionaires. You probably get what I'm talking about. Either way, though, the film, while it can seem a little overstuffed, I think it balances it perfectly. Think about Avengers Infinity War, or even the first Avengers. A lot of people saw those films without seeing many of the others, and they make you understand who these characters are without beating you over the head, and you understand it, and it serves the film. So even if the first Avengers film, which I know for many was their first MCU film, this does that fine balance of introducing you to the concepts, working with it, and you get it. To the point that the film, to me, felt like a breeze. And coming in just over 2 hours, it flies by. There's a lot of time to develop the characters, the way they sprinkle in these little moments of character development, debate, and problems between worldviews. It all really just works. And the plot, for lack of a better term, is not complex. And I don't mean that as it's dumb. It's just not that complex. It's presented the exact way that you think it's going to be, including the third act, which I think a lot of people will look at and say is an insult at Man of Steel. And maybe it is, maybe it isn't, I'm not sure. But the way that they deal with the battle and the third act, I think really is interesting, all new, and puts an interesting spin on things. And while, yes, I think people will compare it to Blue Laser in the Sky, again, a lot of superhero things just do something like that, and you can't really escape that. To compound that even further is a additional supporting cast that I think all works. In their time in this film, everybody works. From Green Lantern, to Metamorpho, to Hawkgirl, to Mr. Terrific, who is absolutely amazing in this film. I think everything has a place that it fits into and slots in perfectly. Now, I'm not saying that it is a perfect film, don't get me wrong. It does have a few issues here and there. There's definitely a couple of problems I'm going to talk about after this section, but everything seems to be balanced well. And one thing that sticks out to me is Lex Luthor. This, I think, might go down in history as one of the best renditions of Lex we've ever seen. Because he truly is Lex Luthor, but not the way you might think. And the way they humanize him and dehumanize him, and I don't want to get into spoilers, and the way they make him just be evil is honestly very welcoming. And there are multiple scenes where Nicholas Hoult steals the show. He truly embodies what I think Lex should be in live action. He honestly, along with Superman, might be some of the best parts of this entire film. And now the final part of this review. I'm sorry it's getting long, but there's a lot to be said about this film. The problems in the film. And there's only really one problem, and that's visual effects. There are multiple scenes in this film where the visual effects get to look a bit rubbery. They don't look human. They don't look real. And there's so much action and wham bam, thank you ma'am happening on the screen with Superman flying around rapidly that it has this almost rubbery looking CW flash effect. You know what I'm talking about. If you've seen the film, I think you're going to understand what I'm talking about. Some people might get upset at this because I'm just pointing out a fact. Guys, it's okay to say that some of the visuals are bad when the rest of the film is good. Same thing I said about Thunderbolts. That scene in the Watchtower with Sentry looks rubbery. The CG there is a little wonky, but the rest of the film makes up for wonky CG. It's not the deciding factor. I'm sorry to tell you that some of the CG in this film gets rather bad, because there are scenes that are 100% CG, and it shows. It especially shows compared to scenes where you have David on a wire, on a green screen, or actually suspended above a city, and then they intercut that with him flying around in his CG model. It's just not as grimy, dirty, and as dingy, and it has that clean sheen over it that unfortunately you can tell is CG. But let me actually get to the verdict and the rest of the film. Because outside of that, this is the best live-action Superman film we have ever gotten, bar none. This is Superman at his core. Now, people will obviously ask, how does it compare to this TV series or that TV series? Honestly, I don't think you can compare it. I don't think you can compare this to Smallville or Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, or even Superman and Lois and Tyler's version, because they're not comparable. The amount of time they get as opposed to the amount of budget that they don't get, where this is reversed, where they have less time but more budget and they're rapidly firing off, which is why I always say it's unfair to compare the TV versions of Superman to live action. Completely different ball games. In this instance, I think that this is peak Superman. And I am saying that encapsulating every version of live action film Superman that we have ever gotten. This is the best Superman in live action film, bar none, hands down. Now, you guys know I do not do scores here. I hate scores because people fixate on those, and we stopped that well over a decade ago. I think it's stupid. I think everything I said speaks for itself. I think if I was to give this a score, you know exactly where it would go just by everything that I've said. This film is the best DC film since The Batman, which is the best DC film since Batman Begins. This is top 3 DC Comics films ever, in my opinion, with ease. It is almost perfection for Superman in live action. Thank you for checking out that video, and thank you for your continued support. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, do whatever you will, and if you're so inclined and would like some additional content from us, which includes unfiltered content and bonus discussions, we do offer exclusively in our member section. We hope to see you there. So thank you for watching, and have a good one.